Hello, I'm Jessica.
And I'm Claudia.
And we are the parents of a lovely little 3-year-old called Rupert, who we made using donor sperm. What a way to start a video. And we have been together for 10 years.
Oh my god.
We've been married for 8 of them.
Rupert came into our lives. I was going to say, how did he come into through my belly?
He likes to say out of the tummy.
Out of the tummy. And for order him to be put in the tummy, we had to use donor sperm.
We did. We actually ended up trying 2 different donors because we ran out of the first one, doing different IUIs.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we seem to have bad luck with choosing donors who then stopped donating. It's like,
But there's a whole video about how we actually created Rupert and our journey to parenthood, which you can watch by clicking the little card up there, and I'll also leave the link in the description. But today we thought we would answer some common questions about donor sperm, because boy, do we get asked a lot of them. A lot of questions.
Also, I feel like we've done fertility, like we did it with Rupert, we did the IUIs, and we've done like four rounds of egg collections and 6 transfers. I feel like we know quite a lot about it now from a personal first-hand experience kind of point of view, plus all the research we've done around it.
Yeah.
I think it's just useful to have someone who's gone through it to tell you about it.
So this video is for anyone who is looking into using donor sperm, but also for anyone who has asked a really awkward question to someone who has a donor-conceived child and has then been sent this video. Hi, don't panic. I'm not here to judge you for not knowing the right answers to something. Just here to educate and share the actual answer, because maybe that person doesn't want to answer it for the 100th time.
What is the etiquette around the conversation of donor sperm?
Will they meet their dad? Not the dad, not. These questions also cover the 4 main parameters that we had to think about when choosing the donor for our family. Number 1, anonymous donor versus known donor. An anonymous sperm donor, someone who has donated their sperm in the hope of giving someone the opportunity to have a family. Generally, this is to a sperm bank, or it can be directly to a fertility clinic. There are 2 different types of donor, anonymous and ID donor. With an anonymous donor, whilst you may get a sheet that tells you a lot about the person, from their height to their size of their eyes, you may even be able to see childhood photos of them or photos of them as an adult, but you won't be able to receive any legal information about them, including their name or their address at the time of donation, even if that's something that's requested by the donor-created child once they are of age. Some countries and some fertility clinics offer the option of having donors that are so anonymous, you as the person receiving sperm actually never find out anything about the donor. With an ID donor, and this is the option that you have to have in the UK, the completely anonymous donor is not an option. You'll be able to access the same kind of information about the person, but you won't be able to get any information about them that would allow you to track them down. However, the child who is created from this donor will, at the age of 18, if they so wish, be able to contact the sperm bank or fertility clinic and ask to be given the name and address of the donor at the time of donation and request a message be passed along to the donor. This, of course, doesn't mean that once the person turns 18, the donor is immediately there to be some kind of parental figure in their life. The donor is still very much within their rights to say, no, I do not wish to have contact. With a known donor, sperm is donated at the clinic by someone you know or a donor you've met through an introduction website. So the donor-conceived individual has the right to request information about their donor from the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority, HFEA, which keeps records of donors.
This is a really good point to talk about with your partner if you're hoping to conceive a child with a partner, was where did they stand on it? And even though in the UK you have to legally use an ID donor, they can still be anonymous in that sense that we don't know anything about them other than the profile given on the donor sperm bank. But we still had to talk about, would we want to know? And at the beginning we had quite split opinions about it.
I think there's definitely a thing where there's a consideration of, particularly if you're a couple where it's like, well, yeah, I wish we could blend our DNA together. I would just love to see that happen. And one of you has maybe a sibling. If you took their DNA and blended it with your partner, you'd be like, oh, it could happen. Wow, they would actually maybe be at the closest possible thing to blending our DNA. But is that really something that you would be interested
I think it depends,
wanting to see and wanting to make happen? Because once that child is actually in your life, and for me particularly, I'm the non-biological parent to our child, biology for me isn't hugely important. It's not something that I'm like, oh, he must have similar characteristics to me. I mean, he is actually incredibly similar to me, but it's not something that I'm like, oh, I need him to have my family's nose.
Yeah. And to be honest, like I'd say you already were like, I don't care about genetics. For me, I was like, I care more about genetics than you do but I think I've got mixed race heritage. I'm like part Chinese Malaysian, and my mum was the Chinese Malaysian one who died. And I think I really wanted to like carry that part of me through, like that felt important to me. And also I wanted our child to have that kind of like, I guess mixed race heritage, similar to like the same as mine or similar to mine. And also the other reason was I just really wanted to be pregnant and to experience that. So using a donor sperm rather than doing something like adoption just was our preference.
But it's not easy to find a donor who is white and half Chinese Malaysian. So we were like, well, there we go then. It will be your egg.
Yeah.
Easy. But on the kind of like, would we want it to be someone that we know or someone that we don't know? For me, I did feel strongly that I wanted us to have a very closed family where it's like, we are the parents.
Mm-hmm.
This is it, like these are our children. And I felt that if we used a known donor, someone who was a friend, a family member, even like a friend of a friend of a friend, that we went, oh, well, they kind of look like the other person, oh, that's convenient. I don't want to know anything.
Yeah, and I feel
I don't want to be like,
yeah,
oh no, I know who they're dating.
And
I know that they were a bad person in their relationship
and
now.
Even though we're like, oh, the genetics is not a big factor to us. It's not a factor when we like don't have a personal connection to it. I think that it became in our mind it became a problem or potential problem when we could connect it to someone, because I think we would personally maybe find it hard to disconnect looking for or seeing certain traits or phenotypic characteristics and that taking it away from us as being the parents in some way.
Even like I have a brother, and had we used my brother's sperm, I think we're not identical. There are definitely things I'd be like, oh, that's more of my brother's nose than my nose. Noses are a big thing in our family because Rupert likes to point out I have a massive nose.
I like the pun, not unintended there as well. Noses are a big thing in my family.
How much does sperm cost?
A lot.
Donors can be compensated for expenses, but not paid for their donations. Compensation is regulated to cover reasonable expenses such as travel and time off work, but it should not be a financial incentive. The price for each vial of donor sperm generally ranges from about £300 to above £1,000, not including potential additional treatments or storage fees. And depending on the country you live in, you may also need to get a special family slot, which essentially means that you have purchased the right to have that donor's offspring in that country, and other people can't, or not too many other people can't. It's advisable to contact specific fertility clinics or sperm banks to get detailed and accurate pricing based on your needs, because we all have different needs. So different types of sperm, as I said, cost different amounts.
They're ranked from motile like 5 up to like, I don't know, like 40 or something, I don't know, but it's basically like,
I think I saw 51.
Yeah, I think it's like it's obviously like how fast and good and healthy the sperm are generally as an indicator. And the lower the number, the cheaper it is, the higher the number, the more expensive. When we were doing IUI, which we did 5 rounds of, the cost of sperm was a big like hit.
Every time you try,
yeah, it's like
the whole vial.
But I feel like with IUI, the donor sperm is like the main part of that treatment. It is like you need some sperm, the rest is up to your body to do. But when you're doing IVF, there's so many other treatment costs associated with that, because obviously you're not just paying for sperm, you're paying for like an embryologist to check the egg development, you're you're paying for freezing storage fees, you're paying for ICSI, you're paying for
to get the eggs out.
To be retrieved, you're paying for sedation, blah, blah, all the medication. So there's all these extra things that suddenly the donor sperm cost just seems like a smaller percentage of that, because obviously it is. I feel like it's when you do IVF, you're kind of committed now to a bigger spend, that the sperm, even though it's annoying that you have to pay that much for it, it doesn't feel as...
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And also another good thing about IVF in terms of trying to cut costs where you can is obviously choose a less motile sperm from the donor that you've chosen, but also they don't need to use as much. So they will often use one vial can be split into often 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 potential IVF rounds.
Yeah.
We did it once and they did 3 rounds of it with one vial.
Plus you make multiple embryos.
Yes.
From that round, which is obviously wonderful.
Whereas with IUI at our specific clinic, they use 1 whole vial for every attempt you try, which obviously then that's just a lot of money quickly used up.
Yes.
I never felt really angry about it, about the cost of it, because I feel like it's probably been costed fairly. The donors don't get a lot of money, I believe. They don't in the UK especially. And in Europe it's more charitably done. They have all the admin, they have all of the paperwork they have to keep forever, basically. They have all of the genetic testing that all of these donors have to be screened for, blood tests, they have to go in regularly, they have to update all their personal life and sexual life, they have to be screened for STDs and all sorts of things all the time. And I think that obviously has a lot of running costs.
Yes.
And you are paying not just for some sperm, you're paying for the quality of that sperm and all of the safety and security that's giving you.
UK fertility clinics and sperm banks licensed by the HFEA have to screen the donor sperm they use, including known donor sperm, to ensure it is safe. Screening is for infections and certain genetic disorders. Sperm donated outside of a licensed fertility clinic will not have been screened for infections and inheritable diseases. If you choose to have treatment at an overseas fertility clinic, then they may have different safety rules, so it's really worth doing your homework. If you import donor sperm from abroad, it has to be tested as in UK compliant and ID donor release. I think one of the wonderful things about using donor sperm is that it is screened and you know so much. I think if you just fall in love with someone, you don't know.
I mean, it's great. I wish dating
you
profiles
don't know
were...
everything that they've got.
Yeah.
What did their great grandparents die of?
I mean,
find out.
The only thing you kind of don't know from these donor profiles sometimes is what they look like as an adult. Actually, you can know that if you want to.
Some of them.
Okay, the only thing you don't know is what do they smell like? Because
their name. You don't know their name.
Other than that, but I mean, you don't know what they smell like. I feel like it's important, pheromones.
Oh, right.
You know, because you can listen to their voice. You can see a silhouette of their face or an actual picture. You can see pictures of them as a baby or as a child. You can look at their handwriting.
Yeah, Rupert's donor had a silhouette of his face.
Yeah, and he had a massive beard.
And we were
great.
How do we know? He could have a humongous chin.
Well, we didn't really care.
No chin.
We didn't go on the... We went on the...
No.
But they also gave a lot of descriptions of ears, medium set, lobes, long, nose, regular, eyes, narrow. I know that his lips were full though, because Rupert has
really full lips.
And I'm you didn't get those from me.
They are his sister's lips, I have to say.
Oh, okay. And probably my mum's.
Yeah, there's a photo of you downstairs with you, your sister, and Rupert in the middle. And I'm it looks like you and your sister had a baby.
Screening of the sperm, it's a full assessment and screening of that person as well?
Yes, going through a regulated clinic is a very safe process. I mean, we can't say that as to be fair, I can't say that as a blanket statement for absolutely everyone. There are always going to be things that don't make the list of 300 genetic issues that they screen for, because there are lots of things out there and people can be carriers of stuff, people can have it in their mutations and not have it show until they then have a child, or just the donor mixes strangely with
and they don't check for
other genetics.
I mean, your condition, for instance, wouldn't have been tested for.
HNPP is not
condition
on the list of 300 things that they would test for.
You can get epigenetic sort of things where, they might be predisposed to something, but it's not going to show up on a DNA test. You can kind of go in feeling you know as much as you can.
Yes. Do you get to meet the donor and who has parental rights? The UK has a clear legal framework for establishing parental rights. If a sperm donor is not involved in the conception process, it was taken outside of their body. Also that they are not a partner or a known donor, they have no legal parental rights or obligations. The partner of the person receiving the sperm, if applicable, must also be legally recognised as a parent. In the UK, donor-conceived individuals have the right to request information about their donor from the HFEA once they reach the age of 18. Because we live in the UK and we're married, when Rupert was born, I was put on his birth certificate as the other parent. I actually got to go on first because they just changed the bit that says father and put parent. So it's me, I'm number one.
Yeah.
I'm parent and she's mother. I'd like to be mother too, but
yeah.
Well.
It was a bit of a bizarre experience. I mean, you and Rupert came in, but he was asleep in the car, so you both stayed in the car, didn't you? And then
they didn't need to see
him. And then
him.
I went through and
very
said,
odd.
do you need them to come? And she was like, no, I trust you. And then I think I showed your passport and said, this is my wife. And I had to show my marriage certificate.
Yeah, do you think you should have showed the marriage certificate and my passport? And this person just decided you had a friendly face.
And she was like, yeah, sure. Why would
Don't
I
need to see
make
it.
up a pretend baby?
I don't know. But to get a passport, so now you could have an international spy, couldn't you?
I was like,
You've raised a spy now.
I was a bit foggy.
Be a
I mean, to
fake
be honest,
child.
maybe I also had to show my maternity discharge date. Does that make more sense?
You did. So it was beautiful and lovely and meaningful, and it's just being completely banal. So I liked that moment. That was wonderful. If you create a baby with a known donor, as long as you are doing it to, I believe, as long as you're doing it through a clinic or can show that you had the intention to create this child in your couple without this donor, they do count it as the child of your couple. In terms of meeting the donor, that is something that I think the 18-year-old donor-conceived child is able to request through the agency. When they turn 18 and they get their file, they can ask for their file. They can then say, can you please ask the donor if we can meet?
Yeah.
And then the agency can ask the donor and the donor can say yes or no.
Yeah, so I think the donor can stay anonymous if they choose to be.
Yeah, they can just say. Although there are lots of people who do the dibling meetups, donor siblings, which is where you can kind of find them online. Create Facebook groups. Did you also use Donor 256?
I think there are groups and forums within the donor sperm banks in order to specifically do this kind of thing, where you can meet other people who've used the same donor, because a lot of different countries will have different rules on how much a specific donor can donate. So how many families can be made. So different countries have quite high numbers and other countries have very low numbers. Some are based on actual children created and some are based on families. So it doesn't matter if that family has 9 children, and so on. So so I think people find it quite interesting to meet up with other families created with the same donor. And how do you feel about this, Jessica?
It's not something that I would think about. I don't personally think that biology and the genetics aspect is important, but then that's my feeling. That doesn't.
I think for the reasons.
I think the people you're raised with are your siblings.
Yes.
Rather than those who happen to share some DNA with you.
Yeah, and that would be the only common thing you had, surely.
Yeah.
We wanted an anonymous donor, and having that kind of justice as the family and justice as the parents is also is kind of the same reason why we wouldn't want to go to one of those dibling meetups.
Have they taken me here because they want me to be part of this group rather than Rupert's really into being part of a clan.
He holds our hands at dinner time. We never even taught him this. He said he just reaches out his hands. It's almost like we're about to say grace, and he goes family and looks us in the eyes, and we're and we have to then both say family. And he's done it in front of people, and I think it feels like it's something that we must have initiated, but we didn't.
I know, people are what is this?
So I think if we suddenly took him to one of those dibblings, he might feel a bit oh, you don't think I'm not?
He's wait, what?
Yeah, I think it'd be confusing for him.
So now that's out of the way, how did we choose our specific donor?
Now that that's out of the way, that was so long.
Oh my gosh, that was incredibly long. So yeah, so we went to an online sperm bank. Don't mind her, just drinking. Obviously one that our clinic had approved, and the HFEA. I don't think we kind of originally went with the intent of finding someone that was my exact match. I mean, we were like toyed with that idea.
Would you, if you get to choose, would you still choose someone with the same size nose as yours? Like we weren't so fussy about certain things. Like other people, we definitely, you know, there definitely will be people out there who would be like, people, I want a son who plays basketball.
Yeah, we've met people who are like, I want
really
blonde haired, blue eyed, they must be tall, they must have
athletic build.
Athletic build.
They must have got a professional degree. They must be working as a professional, which are all just silly things.
This like, level of education, and you're like, but you don't know that person wouldn't have achieved that level of education.
You don't know what
given a different background or a different family that they would
and had the opportunities.
This is nothing about their actual abilities.
No, and I don't think it reflects your intelligence based on like what you're doing as a job. And also having athletic build also doesn't actually affect, because it's like, okay, well that person has time and energy to go exercise and that's become a routine of theirs. It doesn't mean that you don't know if that's genetically they're predisposed to be thinner and athletic. Maybe they work really hard at that. Like you said, if we're given the right opportunities or had time or had a different like living lifestyle.
Also, to be honest, if they're like, they've not got time to go to the gym, maybe it's because they've got 9 kids.
Yeah, so they're actually really fertile.
Yeah, they're really fertile, and that's the time to actually buy. So
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so we kind of went in being like, well, obviously it's going to be hard to find someone who's half white, half Chinese Malaysian. Let's just try and make this work. But we weren't super fussy about it. It has to be the exact
and also like,
whiteness. So my genetic makeup is essentially like half Scandinavian.
You're like Northern Europe.
Northern European, a bit of Eastern European, and a bit of Celtic. Pale people.
Pale people.
There you go.
From
just
the
needed to find some pale, kind of tall. But again, it wasn't something that we looked for.
No. We weren't really fussy about like blonde or brunette, because you're like naturally
dark blonde,
but we were just like, well,
isn't my natural hair colour.
I don't really mind, and I'm like brunette, so we were like, well, you know.
We assumed
our kid would come out with dark hair like me, saying that the darker genes are going to be stronger. But
Claudia has a blonde father, so
yeah, and Rupert came out
we
blonde.
were all surprised.
It gets to a point where you like
overthink it. You can definitely overthink it.
Yeah.
I think we did well. We managed to put together an INFJ and an ENFJ, and we created a child who really does.
People often say, often they think he's your child, like, because he does. I think he does have similar like looks to you in some ways, like similar eyes and things like that. And like
he's got just like a Eurasian.
And he's got your hair color, your natural hair color rather than mine. But also the main thing is just like his whole personality is not his whole personality, because there's some parts of his personality like his stubbornness, which is
some
like
parts,
me.
yes,
but
and he is his own personality,
and he's quick to anger. That's me. But yours, like he has the same interests as you.
All the same interests.
He loves like the same colours as you.
We have shared favourite colours.
Yeah,
it's one of his favourite
things
to point
out.
out.
Have like the similar kind of like happy demeanour.
Yeah. We love fashion, we love kings and queens, we love ballet, we love dancing, we love
flowers.
Yeah,
like pink and purple and
gold.
gold.
And purples, golds. We love sparkly things. We like painting nails.
You love being sociable. Like
he loves
being with people.
Got to find out everyone's story. Who are you? Where are you from?
Whereas I'm like,
who are your people?
You know, I'm like, when I was a kid, I was like, let's go dig a hole in the garden and climb this tree.
I'm gonna be by myself.
Yeah.
For hours.
And I'm like, Rupert, do you want to come for a walk? And he's like, no.
No.
I'm just gonna play with my princess. I'm like, okay.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you learned something from it. Maybe it has helped you on your pathway to conceiving, or maybe it's just answered some questions that you have. Again, just to be clear, a donor is not a dad. Please don't ask. Subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about LGBTQ+ parenting, Montessori parenting, disability, chronic illness, LGBTQ+ history. We've got it all.